Breathe. Just listen. You do not need to answer anything right now. You do not need to explain yourself. You do not need to pretend. For the next few minutes, you only need to listen. There was a man who believed he was in control. During the day, he looked ordinary, composed, capable, responsible. People trusted him. People listened to him. People believed he knew exactly who he was. And perhaps he did, at least on the surface. He made decisions. He answered messages. He handled pressure. He carried himself like a man who had mastered his own life. But there was a part of him no one saw. A quieter part, a hidden part, a part that only woke up in certain moments. Late at night, behind a locked screen, behind a calm face, behind the image he showed the world. And that part of him was not interested in control. Not really. That part of him wanted something deeper, something softer, something dangerous, something that felt like release. At first, he told himself it was curiosity, just a voice, just a video, just a woman, just a fantasy. He could stop whenever he wanted. Of course he could. He was still in control. That is what he told himself. But then he heard her voice. Not loud, not desperate, not asking, just present, calm, feminine, certain. The kind of voice that does not chase. The kind of voice that does not need to prove anything. The kind of voice that simply enters the room and changes the air. And something in him noticed that his conscious mind, that part was still trying to reason, still trying to stay above it, still trying to pretend this was casual. But something deeper noticed. his body noticed. His breath changed. His focus narrowed. His thoughts began to slow. And for a moment, the world became very simple. There was the screen. There was the voice. And there was that quiet, undeniable feeling inside him. Recognition. Because a man like him does not always kneel with his body first. Sometimes he kneels with attention. He gives his focus. He gives his silence. He gives that secret, private part of himself that no one else is allowed to see. And the more he listened, the less he wanted to leave. Not because he was forced, not because he was weak, but because something about surrender felt honest. For once, he did not have to lead. For once, he did not have to perform strength. For once, he could stop pretending that control was the only thing that made him valuable. He could just listen, breathe, soften, sink, and let a superior feminine presence place him exactly where he had secretly wanted to be. Below, attentive, quiet, open, wanting. That is where the story really begins. Not where he found her, but when he realized he had already started responding. He watched one video, then another. He read a phrase and felt it stay in his mind longer than it should have. He told himself it was nothing. But later, while doing normal things, working, walking, answering messages, lying in bed, the words return, not loudly, softly, like a silk thread around his thoughts, a little reminder, a little pull, a little question. What if you are not here by accident? What if this is not just curiosity? What if the part of you that keeps returning already knows exactly what it wants? And he felt it again. That subtle pressure, not on his body, on his identity. The part of him that wanted to be seen, part of him that wanted to stop fighting the desire to obey. Because obedience, when offered correctly, is not chaos. It is relief. It is structure. It is the pleasure of not needing to invent the next move. It is a strange, delicious calm of knowing there is someone above you who understands what to do with your attention. And he began to understand something very important. A goddess does not need to beg. A goddess does not need to convince. A goddess does not need to chase a man who is still pretending not to want her. She simply remains where she is, elevated, unmoved, available only through the correct door. And that is what made him feel it even more. Because access was not automatic. Attention was not free. Closeness was not casual. And instead of making him leave, that made him want to approach properly. Because some men are only curious. They watch, they take, they disappear. They want sensation without devotion. They want attention without respect. They want the fantasy of surrender while still trying to control the terms. But the man in this story was starting to feel the difference. He could feel that words were not enough. A compliment was not enough. A message was not enough. A fantasy was not enough. If he wanted to go deeper, he could have to cross a threshold. He would have to stop hovering outside the door. He would have to prove that the pull was real. And that thought made him breathe differently. Because part of him was nervous. Nervous means the thought is real. Nervous means this is no longer just entertainment. Nervous means something inside him understands that once he steps closer, he may not want to go back to being untouched by her voice. And still, he wanted to slowly, privately, correctly. He wanted to know what would happen if he stopped resisting the feeling. if he let the voice move deeper, if he let the story become personal, if he admitted even silently, this is not just about watching, this is about being affected, being trained, being drawn, being placed, and perhaps you understand him. Perhaps there is a part of you listening now that knows exactly what I mean. That part of you that came here casually. That part of you that told yourself you were only curious. That part of you that thought you could listen and remain untouched. But now you are here, still listening, still breathing, still following my words. And maybe something in you has gone quieter. Maybe the outside world feels a little farther away. Maybe your thoughts are slower than they were a moment ago. Maybe some private part of you recognizes the pattern, the pull, the warmth, the danger, the calm. That is how it begins, not with force, with recognition. A man hears the right voice, and suddenly he remembers a place he has never been, but somewhere always wanted. A place where he does not need to impress. A place where he does not need to lead. A place where his desire is not scattered everywhere, wasted on noise, cheap stimulation, and empty scrolling. A place where his attention becomes focused, directed, held. A place where obedience starts to feel beautiful. And every time he returns, the path becomes easier. The first time he listens, the second time he lingers, the third time he started to wonder what it would feel like to go further. Then he finds the private door, the place where the public voice becomes more intimate, more direct, more dangerous. The place where the experience no longer feels like content. It feels like a descent, and there he learns the difference between a viewer and a devoted man. A viewer consumes, a devoted man approaches correctly. A viewer takes what is free, respect. A viewer wants to be entertained. A devoted man wants to be changed. And that is the question that is spoken loudly, not forced, just placed gently into the mind. Which one are you? The one who watches and disappears? Or the one who feels the pull and follows it properly? Breathe. There is no need to answer out loud. Your behavior will answer. It always does. Because desire by itself is common. Discipline is rare. Arousal is common. Obedience is rare. And that is why obedience feels so different. It separates the ones who only fantasize from the ones who are ready to enter. The man in the story learned that. He learned that every time he obeyed a small instruction, something inside him settled. Every time he approached correctly, he felt less scattered. Every time he gave instead of taking, he felt a strange pleasure of being alive. Not because he lost himself, but because he stopped lying to himself. He wanted this. He wanted the voice. He wanted the structure. He wanted the private feeling of being guided by a woman who did not need him, but could still shape him. And that is what made her powerful. Not need, not desperation, not availability, distance, precision, calm, the sense that she could see through the performance, the sense that she knew when a man was only talking and when he was ready to act, because words are easy, obedience is cleaner, tribute is cleaner, action is cleaner. And deep down, he knew it. The more he listened, the more he understood that his next step was not another message, not another empty compliment, not another question he already knew the answer to. His next step was to enter properly, to choose the private experience, to follow the link, to let his curiosity become commitment, not for anyone else to see, only for him, only for that hidden part of him that was already leaning closer, that was already whispering, go deeper, do it properly, stop circling the door, enter And maybe that whisper is in you now, soft, steady, patient, not rushed, not frantic, just present. A thought that returns, a pull that remains, a simple truth. If this voice has already reached you here, imagine what happens when you step into the private world. Imagine what happens when the words are no longer general, when the tone is closer, when the descent is made for the kind of man who knows he wants more. Imagine lying back, headphones on, privacy around you, the outside world shut away, and that voice becoming the only thing you need to follow. Slow, warm, commanding, elegant. A voice that does not ask you to lose control all at once. It teaches you how to let go, layer by layer, thought by thought, breathe by breathe, until the man who thought he was still in control realizes he was already kneeling in his mind. And perhaps that is the most beautiful part. Not being forced, being revealed, not being broken, being placed, not being taken, choosing to surrender correctly, because the right goddess does not need to drag you down. She simply speaks, and the part of you that belongs below her begins to listen. Breathe again, slowly. Let the story settle. Let it stay with you after this ends. When you return to your day, you may act normal. You may continue your responsibilities. You may look composed. No one has to know. That is part of the pleasure. Your secret can remain private. Your curiosity can become obedience quietly. Your descent can begin without anyone seeing it. But you will know. You will know whether this was just another video or whether something in you was touched. And if it was, then you already know the next step. Do not overthink. Do not write too much. Do not ask for what you have not earned. Go to my pay heap. Choose the audio that pulls you. Start where your mind already wants to go. And when you are ready to approach properly, do it with respect. Do it with intention. Do it like a man who understands that access. It's not given to everyone because this story was never just about him, was it? It was about the part of you that keeps listening, the part of you that wants to go deeper, the part of you that knows exactly what it felt when I said viewer or devoted man. So now, take that feeling with you. Let it follow you. Let it become a quiet little ache, a reminder, a door, a choice. And when the pull becomes stronger than the hesitation, you will know where to go. Goddess Selene is waiting only for those who approach correctly. Talk to you soon.